I'm just going to do a little introduction.
How long do we have?
You have an hour and a half.
Okay, just so I can.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to take the entire time, but that's what I have it scheduled for.
Okay, just so I can keep an eye. I'll just keep an eye on the clock.
Yeah, okay.
And do that.
All right.
You don't have to do much of an intro.
I know. Okay. Welcome, everybody, to Peter White Public Library. I don't know how many of you know me. My name is Marty Ackitts. I'm the Adult Programming Coordinator for the library. And I just have a couple groups one group that I really need to thank tonight, and that is the Friends of Peter White Public Library. They provide so much funding for what we do, and they paid for all the live streaming equipment that we use during these programs. So if you are watching online right now or after the fact, you have the Friends to thank for that. They just had their book sale, and they raised $50,000 in that used book sale for the library. So they are an amazing group, amazing, and we're so thankful for them. So I'm just going to make you aware of a few things that are coming up this week and next week and at the end of the month as well. Tomorrow night, we have our monthly meeting of the Marquette Poets Circle. That's going to start at 6:30. We're going to have a short workshop session for anybody that wants to workshop a poem from 6:30 to 7. Then at 7 o'clock, we sort of have a special thing. The 10-year anthology of the Marquette Poets Circle that was published last year was named UP Notable Book. And so we're going to have in this room, we're going to have a broadcast of several of the poets from that anthology who are going to be reading as part of a reading series for the UP Notable Book. So that starts, the reading itself will start at 7 o'clock right here in the Shiras room. And I'd like to say I promise it'll be cooler in here, but I can't guarantee that. It is warm. So, and then on Friday, in the community room downstairs, we have our docu-cinema, which is a monthly series that we have. And this month's documentary is called The Art of the Scare. And it's about these new Halloween haunted houses that it's a subculture of them that focus on full contact terror. I don't know if anybody in this room is interested in full contact terror. I know I'm not, but I have watched the documentary. It's really, really great. So that's on Friday at 12 noon downstairs. And then next week, Monday, we have, if you're interested in science, we have called Spooky Science, and we have someone who's a raptor expert who's going to be, we're going to be dissecting owl pellets. Eat before you come, please. Anyway, but that's going to be on Monday, 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. downstairs in the community room, and I think it's going to be really fascinating. I'm not going to be dissecting anything, but other people are. And then Tuesday we have Josh Brindle, who's a poet and a writer, and he's going to be doing what's called typewritery or nonsense with typewriters, and it's going to be in this room, and we're just going to have some fun with old manual typewriters. I think everybody in this room can remember those. I tell my son about typewriters, and he's like, what are those? Where do you plug them in? So anyway, so that's on Tuesday in the Shiras room at 6:30 to 8 p.m. Next Wednesday, we have two poets who are going to be reading, Dennis Henriksen and Andrew Collard. Dennis Henriksen was the first Lansing Poet Laureate, and both of these poets are really wonderful, have new books out. So that's at the community room downstairs next Wednesday, 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. And then, if that's not enough, we have another movie next Friday as part of our Global Cinema Series, and that is going to be Guillermo del Toro's Pan's Labyrinth, which is a really, really wonderful film, and I really recommend that you come and see that one. And then near the end of the month, we have our Alex Gino reading as part of our Banned Books Month celebration. Alex Gino is the author of the book Melissa, which since its publication in 2015 has landed on the top 10 of banned books since that time. So Alex Gino will be here virtually to read in the community room on the 23rd, Monday from 7 to 8 p.m., and anybody's welcome to come to that. The question session at the end is going to be moderated, so you have to submit your questions beforehand, and then I will be moderating that and asking the questions. Blues Day Tuesday on the 24th. See, there's so much. Blues Day Tuesday on the 24th at 7 p.m. In the community room, Tyler Tischler, who is another author in the area, is going to be presenting on Wednesday the 25th for Halloween, 7 to 8 p.m. He's going to be talking about his new book, which is called Gothic Grooms and Spectre Brides. So it's a really great book where he examines the different elements of Gothic literature. And then at the end of the month, let's see, A Carnival of Horrors. If this wasn't enough for you, we're showing 3 films on the 28th, Saturday. Starting at 10 a.m., we're going to be showing 3 films. Beetlejuice is the first one. We're also going to have Halloween trivia, a costume contest. We're showing Beetlejuice, Poltergeist, and then at the end of the day, we're going to be showing the movie Scream. So if you're a big horror movie fan, that is the day to come. And if you're a popcorn fan, come to any of the movies. We have our new popcorn machine, so you will get popcorn. And I can't guarantee how well I'm going to make it. I've only done it a couple times. So anyway, lots of great stuff. All of this is on the October flyer back there. And then I also have the November flyer that will tell you what is coming up next month. So anyway, I'm going to turn things over to John here. I'm sure I don't need to really introduce him. He can introduce himself and tell you about his experiences. So I was really excited when he said he wanted to come back and do this because his presentation last year was so wonderful, and I really appreciated that. So let's give a big hand to John talking about diving the Reefs and Reefs.
Okay, well, thank you all very much. And I think I know pretty much everyone here, so I appreciate all you coming here this evening. Marty tells me I'm already tired from listening to everything that Marty's planned for the entire month. Holy cow. He tells me I have about an hour and a half here. I will spend... Those of you who know me know that I will talk about scuba diving forever. So I will spend as much time as you would like sharing some information with you. As I go through this, and I have some slides here that show, I've taken all the pictures in this and all the video, underwater, above water. As we go through this information, if you have questions, why don't we go ahead and address them there. You can raise your hand or just stand up or just shout it out. That way we can get all your questions addressessed before we get out of here later on this evening, okay? Is anyone here a scuba diver, a certified diver? Eugene is, and I forgot, Trent, you got certified as well. I'm also told that I need to kind of hang here behind the podium. I'm not much of a podium person, but because they're live streaming this and recording this, they're not going to let me wander around too much. So if I start to wander away from the microphone, someone give me the high sign and I'll wander back. Okay? To kind of introduce you to the world of scuba diving, I have a brief video here. I'm certified by an organization called PADI. It's the Professional Association of Diving Instructors. And this is a film that I found on their website. It's not to get you certified as a diver, but it kind of gives you an idea about a scuba diver's life. So if I did this correctly, takes about 30 seconds, I think. So we'll see if it works.
Never fall in love with a scuba diver. He'll spend every weekend at the beach and have an uneven tan. Her hair will never be dry, and her kiss will often be salty. He'll have a scruffy chin and own more board shorts than ties. He'll spend hours flying to places with no mobile reception and travel miles into the rainforest with people you barely know. He'll insist you drink the local beer, and if you admit to being afraid of sharks, she'll laugh at you. He'll be fascinated by things other people find strange or ugly, and bubble rings are her way of flirting. No trip will ever be as interesting as the time he dove with a whale shark, or the night she danced with villagers in Palau. They dislike fancy dinners almost as much as wearing shoes, and would rather immerse themselves in local culture than talk of settling down. And they can spend hours staring at the ocean, not hearing a word you say. But if, by chance, you fall in love with a mermaid, if a mermaid steals your heart and won't give it back, don't let her gills dry out. Let them answer the call of the sea and slip beneath the waves to be in their other world. Take them on an adventure. Stand in the spray of the waterfall and dive into the unknown. Learn how to say thank you in 10 different languages and see things so amazing you'll have no words to describe them. Let them show you how the ocean transforms.
I love that.
The scuba diver will never love you as much as the ocean, but they will forever love sharing it with you.
During my years of diving, I have found that most, if not all of that, is true. When they talk about wandering through the rainforest and spending time underwater, almost all of that is really, really true. A little bit about me and my certification. That picture, by the way, we're a diving family. So the picture, the top left is my older brother, Eric. Top right is me. Bottom left is my younger brother, Robert. And then the gentleman in the hat is a guy named Dan Howard. He owns a dive shop in Chicago that plans most of the trips that we go on. And this trip was about 10 years ago. We were off the coast of North Carolina diving on a World War II German submarine that the Allies sank in about 110 feet of water. So that was a picture from this trip. When my older brother Eric went to college, he went to Eastern Illinois University. And he came in 1976, and he came back for Christmas break and said, John, if there's one class you have to take, it's called scuba diving. And he had taken it as a required PE course, so when I came to Northern, they offered it as well. And back then you had to have, I think, 4 PE classes, so I signed up for basic scuba and was certified on Sunday, April 8th, 1979, Picnic Rocks just by the YMCA, the coldest I have ever been in my life, pushing the slush away. That was Easter Sunday, and you had to do 3 open water dives to get certified, and we did them, so we got certified in 1979. I was certified advanced in 1982. That's just more training, more classes, more checkout dives. I have over 300 dives in my logbook. My older brother Eric has over 900 dives. I don't think I'm ever going to catch him. I'm trying, but he retired about 10 years before I did, so he's had plenty of time to fill his logbook. I'm what they call nitrox certified. If I remember my high school chemistry, the air we breathe here is 21% oxygen, and pretty much the rest is nitrogen. Nitrox is a special blend that dive operators make, and it's about 32% oxygen. It allows me to stay down longer, but I can't stay down, I can't go as deep as I normally could, and supposedly it is safer for you to, so you don't get the bends, you don't get decompression sickness as you might just breathing regular compressed air. So all of us are nitrox certified, and pretty much anyone who dives now, they are encouraging them to get nitrox. It's just an additional class and a little bit of additional training. It's the smart thing to do. Some of the places I've been, Lake Michigan, Lake Superior, the Cayman Islands, the tropical South Atlantic, in the kelp beds of Monterey Bay, the South Pacific, Puerto Rico, North Carolina coast, the Florida Keys, which I love, San Salvador, the island, not the city, the Bahamas, and the Turks and Caicos are the places that I've been diving so far. And I have a few to add to that in the next couple of years, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. I have kind of an oceanic family. That picture on the left is me and my brothers underwater off the Turks and Caicos, but my sister, this is a picture of her sailing in San Francisco Bay and took scuba, got certified, went on one dive and had trouble equalizing the pressure in her ears, pretty painful, and she came up and said, nope, not for me, and has never dove since. So she took the class because her brothers did, and she wanted to go diving with us, but now she has. Someday I'll come and give a presentation about the stuff my sister does, but she's just not a scuba diver kind of stuff. Basically, what can I do as a diver? I have been certified, if I can get this little thing to work, I have been certified to go to 135 feet. That's the deepest, allegedly, I'm allowed to go. And no one monitors that, but with my training, I can go to 135. I've been to 158 feet. That's the deepest I've been. That was kind of by mistake. I wasn't watching my depth gauge closely enough. Kind of freaked me out, and I'm not going to go that deep again, because then you get into all sorts of really mixed gases and specialized training and decompression stops, and it's very technical, and I don't have the desire to do that. Typically, you're down for about 60 feet for about 60 minutes on a tank of air, and usually what you would do this right here, you do a safety stop at 15 feet. Once you're diving, your body, when you're breathing oxygen and nitrogen, It goes into solution into your blood, and when you are coming out of the ocean, the pressure is less. That starts to form bubbles in your blood, and you have to get that out of there before you get to the surface, otherwise you get the bends. So what you do is you stop at 15 feet, and you just hang there for 3 to 5 minutes, just breathing normally. That allows the nitrogen and the oxygen to come out of solution, and then you exhale it with your lungs, and then you can surface. And I have been on one trip where someone got in a little bit of trouble. Thankfully, my brothers and I, we've been relatively safe. We've never gotten into any kind of medical issues diving. But that kind of gives you an idea of our profile. Usually on most dives, we hang at about 50 feet. You start to lose sunlight below that, and the colors go away. So I'm not much of a deep diver. Some people want to go as deep as they can. I'm not much of a deep diver. I'd rather sit there and look at the fish. The Solomon Islands. So about 4 years ago, my brother called and said, "You want to go to the Solomon Islands?" He had been there before on a different trip, and it really struck a chord with him. And I said, well, I'd be willing to go. So he put together a group of about 12 of us that wanted to go. We got our deposits paid, and then COVID hit. The Solomon Islands closed down. Airlines got really funky with flying. People began to get sick. Hospitals began to fill up. COVID had, come in full bore. So we had to postpone the trip for 3 years. We kept hoping, we waited and waited and waited. And finally, the Solomon Islands opened up. There's no more quarantine. And the boat started operating again. So the trip was on. I don't know how many of you have been over in that part of the world. Basically, you can see the little red circle on the globe. That's where the Solomon Islands are. They are basically a little bit northeast of Australia. There are about 900 islands in the island chain of the Solomons. Most of them are kind of small. About 700 residents. 75% of the people there are basically engaged in subsistence agriculture and living. There's really no industry, there's really no mining, there's no manufacturing. The islands haven't changed much, basically, since World War II. For that, the average air temperature is 79. The ocean temperature 87 degrees, top to bottom. I dove in swim trunks and what they call a rash guard. Protects me more from the sun than anything else. No thermal protection, and that was it. Down 100, 110 feet. And 87 degrees kind of stuff. So that was absolutely amazing. And Guadalcanal is the main island. And for those history buffs, if you know anything about World War II, that's the site of major World War II battles where the Allies started to march up the island chain towards Japan and Tokyo to stop World War II. So that's really where the Pacific fighting began, and Guadalcanal is the main island where most of the fighting at least took place. My brother wanted to go back to this because he said it was some of the most pristine diving he had ever been on, and he'd been on this boat there's only one operator in the Solomon Islands, this operation, and he wanted to go again. And he's not much for repeats at all. So I knew that if he wanted to go back, it must have been somewhere pretty special. So my brother Rob and I signed on for the trip. Getting there is not the easiest thing in the world. I had to get from Marquette to Chicago, overnight in Chicago. The next day we met at O'Hare and flew from O'Hare to LAX, had about a 5-hour layover at LAX, and then flew nonstop from LAX to Sydney in Australia. That was about 15 hours to get there. Once we were in Sydney, we had to get to Brisbane because there's no direct flight from Sydney to Honiara, which is the capital of the Solomon Islands. So we flew to Brisbane. We stayed overnight. The next morning, got on a plane in Brisbane and flew to Honiara, which is the capital of the Solomon Islands. So all told, that's what you need to do to get there. Without layovers, it took us almost 31 hours of flying to get there. There is a route through Fiji, but it's the same amount of hours. We just couldn't make the connections work on our flights. But it just took forever to get there. Kind of stuff. Luckily, our bags followed us. So our arrival, flying into the Solomon Islands. That left-hand picture, that airstrip you might be able to see there, that's Henderson Field. So for the World War II history buffs among us, that's where the Allies first landed and built that airstrip so they could start launching fighter planes and other planes to start bombing the Japanese. So that's actually Henderson Field when you land. The plane was an A320, I think, an Airbus. Same thing as a 737. So it's a modern airplane. The airport, however, is not. And they don't want you to take pictures of the airport. So you can't like whip out your phone and start snapping pictures. But one baggage carousel, one room, kind of stuff, and you just wait for your bags to come off, kind of stuff. Once you get there and get your bags, you walk out of the terminal, and there's someone standing there with a sign that says Bilikiki in a blue polo shirt. And that was the name of the boat that we were on. So he gathered everyone together. We got in a van, got to the harbor where these metal boats, they're called tinnies, 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 would ferry you from the dock out to the Bilikiki, and they hold 8 divers apiece. There were a total of 18 of us on the trip. The boat held 20. There were 18 of us on the trip. So the tinny had to make multiple trips to get you out to the boat. And with that, that's the motor vessel Bilikiki. That was the boat that we were on. And just to I'll show you internal pictures here in a little bit, but to give you an idea, this is what they call the wet deck, where that cut in the gunnel is. That's where all the diving takes place. So they call it the wet deck because obviously divers coming out of the ocean are wet, the gear's wet. That's where you're allowed to be wet. Anything forward of that was the dry part of the boats, and you weren't supposed to be in your bathing suit. You had to change or dry off before you got there. In these windows here is where the galley is, the kitchen, that area, and then this is the dry area. This is where the salon is. So meals, resting between dives, logging your dives in your logbook, talking to people, looking up fish in the reference books and that kind of stuff all took place there. And then this top deck up here was the happy hour deck. So every evening, once the diving was done, we would have happy hour up there before dinner. The crew hung out on the back deck, and if you smoked, and I'm an ex-smoker, I don't understand how people can continue to smoke and dive at the same time, but if you smoked, that's where you had to be, on the back deck by the crew, because a lot of the crew smoked as well. So that was the Bilikiki. That's the crew. Now remember, I said there were 18 of us. If you count that, I think there are 15 people there. So it was almost one crew member for each person, which was really kind of special. Tina, the woman on the left, she's one of the boat managers, and Ollie, O-L-I, Ollie was the husband and wife. They were the boat managers, the dive masters. They basically ran the boat. And one of the most important people on the boat was this gentleman here. His name's John. He was the bartender. You wanted to get to know John. That stuff. But that was the crew. 3 captains, because they always had a captain on duty 24 hours a day, a couple of cooks, a lot of drivers for the tinnies, people to help you on the boat deck, and the couple right here, and I don't remember their names, they just got hired on. They were interns with the Bilikiki organization and were learning the operation of the boat kind of stuff, so they were with us as well. This is the crew, eventually, the crew of divers, and you can see the back row. Basically, most of the back row are the Illinois folks. My brother's going to shoot me someday if he knows that I put that picture up. He's not going to be happy. I'm not going to send, this is live streamed and I think recorded. I'm not sending him the link because he's going to yell at me if he knows that I put that picture up there. But this is the crew, including Lenny. Also, I could spend the rest of the night telling you Lenny's stories. I'll hold off on those until the end. But then the couple here, Aaron and Matt, and now I knew I'd forget her name. The Japanese woman here, I'll get it in a second, 82 years old. And what she does is she goes from one dive trip to the next. She left this and flew to Indonesia to spend a week diving in Indonesia before she flew back to Australia to dive the Great Barrier Reef. She's retired, and she dives the world. That's all she does. She's 82 years old. But those are people we met on the boat, and that's one of the reasons why I like going on these dive trips. The people you meet, you have a common interest, and it's just fun. And towards the end of the 10 days that we were on there, people are exchanging business cards and email addresses, Facebook, friends, this kind of stuff. It's just a lot of fun keeping track of these. In fact, I was just in Bonaire a couple weeks ago with Lenny and my older brother and some other people who are on this trip as well. So when you meet at O'Hare at 6 o'clock in the morning to get that flight down to Miami, it's almost like a high school reunion, meeting at gate K-12 or something like that. And there's Mike and Michelle and Nancy, and it's just, hugs all around. It's just like a big vacation, but they are a lot of fun. Whoops, did I miss that? Right before we sailed, Tina did what they call a boat orientation. Spent about an hour and a half talking to us about the boat, things you could do on the boat, things you weren't supposed to do on the boat. And we pretty much had the run of the entire boat. We could go anywhere we wanted except in the galley, because it was really, really small. And the food they prepared was wonderful, but it was a small galley, and the engine room. We weren't allowed in the engine room. Other than that, we had the run of the boat where we wanted. But she would talk about the daily schedule. She'd talk about the history of the boat, a little bit about where we were going to be going diving, and spend time. And there were refreshments, but we spent that's on that upper deck area I talked about. We spent a great deal of time up there, especially in the evening once the diving was done. The staterooms, very clean, very simple. Left-hand picture is the gangway leading down. There's 5 rooms on each side. And the ladder all the way at the end is important. Keep in mind I showed you that ladder because there were 2 ways to get into the stateroom, and all of that was air-conditioned. The rest of the boat wasn't, but that was air-conditioned. And then this was my bunk room with my brother Rob. I was on the lower, he was on the top, and it had a very small shower, sink, and toilet in each stateroom, so you didn't have to share that with other. You don't do a lot of showering on a dive trip. I mean, you're spending time in the ocean for most of the day anyway, so you don't do a whole lot of showering in a dive, but it was nice to have those towards the end of the day to wash the salt off. So, again, didn't spend a lot of time down there because we were there to dive, but the days start pretty early, and kicking this old body through the water for about 4 hours a day gets you a little bit tired. So we were usually, people would start to disappear right after dinner. 8 o'clock, 8:30, I'd be in my stateroom, I'd try to read for half an hour. That rarely worked because you get up pretty early the next morning and stuff. So, and it was also nice, after the first dive of the day, if you go down to your stateroom, it's all made up again. They had a housekeeping crew that would go through and make your bed, put clean towels in the bathroom. It was really a well-run, nice operation. Charging room. Up on that upper deck, there was a charging room where you can see all these little bins and everything. Each stateroom had its bin, so you'd put your camera, your phone. The boat had I think they're called Australian outlets, which are different than the U.S. outlets. But what they did is they converted the charging room to primarily U.S., because most people came from the U.S. or used that. But we had learned, I knew about this, but one of the things they talked about was the safety of this. They didn't want you charging your things in your stateroom. And unfortunately, the reason for that was the motor vessel, the Conception, in 2019. Some of you may have heard this headline, off the island of Santa Cruz, a dive boat burned to the waterline. 33 divers died, and one of the crew died. And the problem was, one, there was only one way to get down into the gangway where the staterooms were. There weren't 2 entrances. And the one way to get down there was blocked by fire. And to this day, they're not sure exactly what happened, but they are theorizing that it was either a spark from a lithium battery or all the divers overloaded the electrical system on the boat that then caught fire, and it happened like at 2:30 in the morning. And by the time they discovered the fire, it was too late. So now pretty much all these dive operators, at least that we use, they have a completely separate charging area on the boat. You're not allowed to charge your phone because more and more people are doing the underwater photography and video and phones and things, so you're not allowed to do that in your stateroom. They want it done on a specific area of the boat that's out in the open, and it's pretty much monitored. There was always a crew member awake and on the billikiki doing rounds 24 hours a day, especially at night, to make sure that. So that was one of those sad occurrences that unfortunately happens once in a while. The wet deck. You can see there on the far left, Alan is the guy in the blue shirt, is analyzing a tank with my brother Eric. Whenever you're diving nitrox, you have to measure the amount of oxygen in the tank and then code your computer, because that tells you how long you can stay down and how deep you can go. So what they would do is they would analyze the tank, and you'd have to witness that and then log it, and I'll show you the log here in a little bit, log how much. And part of that is in case there's trouble, in case there's a medical issue with you, they can go back and look at that log and see that you were diving 32% oxygen or 30% oxygen, compare that with your computer and try to figure out what exactly happened. The middle picture, Edu, E-D-J-U, is setting up his rig. So you can see the wetsuits being hung. When you get there with your dive gear, you set it up on the wet deck, you take your dive bag down to your stateroom, you never touch it again. Everything you need to dive is on the wet deck for that, including warm, freshwater, hot showers. So divers shower with a friend. And a dive boat is one of those things, it's kind of compact. You're real close to people. And at the beginning of the trip, I noticed, if you bump into somebody as you're putting on your wetsuit or putting on your tank or something like that, it's, I'm terribly sorry. By about the third day, it's like, Nancy, you touch me there again, we're going to have to get married, because pretty soon it's pretty friendly on the boat kind of stuff. But they had these 2 freshwater hot showers on the dive deck, so once you get out and you get your gear all squared away, you can take a quick rinse off in those showers, and it really kind of did make it convenient. That was one of the nicest parts of the boat. Some more of the diving stuff. That top picture there, what they would do is there's a dive board on the wet deck that the boat crew would fill out, and you can see they do try to be artists. But the top part gives you the schedule for the day, and you can see what time we start. So basically, that's a generalized dive briefing at 7:30, which means breakfast is before that. So you want breakfast, you got to get there before the 7:30, because then they tell you what the diving's going to be like for the day, for that. And then coming down here, you can see the reef, and I can't read it too much from here, but these are the 2 morning dives we would do, then lunch, then the 2 afternoon dives, and you can see here where it says WA and MC, I think. The WA stands for wide angle. For the photographers, they're saying most of the stuff we're going to see on this dive, you want your wide angle lens, whether it's a larger turtle or something like that, or on the afternoon, or the other dives, the MC macro, the little tiny stuff. So you can change out, and my camera isn't that sophisticated, but there are some people who have thousands of dollars of camera gear when they go dive. I wouldn't be afraid to take that underwater myself. But that's what those are for. And then you can see here, I don't know if you can read it, but it says Sunset Nibbles. That's their code for happy hour. And then dinner, and then this day they had at almost 8 o'clock a night dive. And I've been night diving. It doesn't thrill me a lot. Different creatures come out when you dive at night. Octopus come out a lot more at night. But I'm telling you, after a day of diving, and I come up from the 4th dive, I get dry, I have dinner. If the bar's open, the pool is closed, I'm about done for the day. I'm just not much of a night diver. My brother Eric will dive every single day. He's a former banker. He figures out cost per dive. He'll take the total trip and divide by the number of dives, and if it reaches a certain point, then he's good with that. But he counts CBD, cost per dive. And the rule is, once you start drinking, once alcohol is involved, you stop diving, because that can really affect you underwater. So when the bar is open, the pool is closed, generally. So I would usually quit diving after 4 dives and, talk to people I'd fill out my log, I'd talk to people on board. One of the nice things about this trip, and Edju was actually the one who noticed it, about the 3rd day, people weren't on their phones. People were talking. He said, look, we were sitting around after lunch. He said, no one's on their phones. Well, first of all, there was no Wi-Fi on board and no cell service. But people were actually talking. The only time you saw people on their phones is I would download pictures from my camera onto my phone, because then I would eventually, when I get a Wi-Fi signal, I'd put it out on the web or Facebook. But that was the only reason people were using or they were reading a book that they had downloaded. But people were talking. It was absolutely amazing. It was really kind of a lot of fun. They do try their hand here at a picture of where you're going to be diving, and they would typically say, okay, we're going to take you over here to the wall. When you jump in, keep the wall on your right shoulder and swim down, and then to come back, just turn around and keep the wall on your left shoulder. So it was a lot of wall diving, and there was always a guide with us when we would go diving. Either Ollie or Tina would dive with us and lead the dive kind of stuff. Not necessarily, which I'll get to here in a moment, but this is, people getting geared up. This is that log sheet I talked to you about. So they had one of these for every day, and once you walk up to your rig, and the crew would analyze your tank for you, and it would say 32, 31.1. You'd come over and you'd fill out the log book and put in there, the nitrox reading, how many feet you're allowed to go, and your initials. And again, part of that, I think, is probably a liability issue. If something happens, they have a record that you knew what you were getting into, and if you got in trouble, it's not necessarily their fault. And I also think they share this with Patty and other places, because they adjust dive tables to figure out, and the Navy to figure out how long you're allowed to stay down depending on how deep you go. So they share this data, not per person, but the actual numbers a little bit. And then this here, you can see this is my rig, with the tank, and that's an 80 cubic foot aluminum tank. And I used to tell people, say, well, okay, what's 80 cubic feet? And I used to say, well, it's about the same amount of air that you find in a phone booth. People don't know what phone booths look like anymore. So I need to come up with something different, but it's about the amount of air in a phone booth squeezed down into that tank, and it will last you typically 60 minutes at 60 feet, depending on how cold the water is, what kind of shape you're in, how nervous you are, things like that. It'll last you about an hour or so. My regulator, this yellow hose back here is my spare regulator called an octopus in case my first one fails. I have a backup for that. My computer right there, and I also have a backup computer that I wear in my wrist that's Wi-Fi'd to the tank. So I carry 2 computers, and most people are doing that now just in case something happens to the first one. It's very rare, but every once in a while something might happen. So I'd just rather be safe. Have anyone here seen that movie called Open Water? Marty, you've seen that? Where the couple who was diving off of the Great Barrier Reef were left out in the ocean, the dive operator. And I don't remember exactly. Basically, the dive operator thought they were there on board. So they left. And this couple, and this is a true story, and the couple were left out there, and they never found the couple. They did find some of their dive gear, kind of chewed up and all that. So, and there's a movie that's, kind of guessing what actually happened to them. Since then, dive operators are very careful about making sure they know how many people get off the boat and how many people get back on the boat. And this is how the Bilikiki did it. This means, and here, I think this says boat behind it, and then it says diving. And you can see my name here. I'm number 34. My brother Rob was 36. And they put a number on your rig that I just showed you. So what you would do, just before you step off the boat, you go over to the dive board, you grab your little fob, and you put it either on one of these 8 hooks, or these 8 hooks, because these are those tinnies. So I would put mine on under T3, which means I'm getting on the 3rd tinny. And they would know, and what they would then do is take my gear, they would take my rig, which is not light, and they would carry it and they would put it on the tinny, and then I would get in the tinny and put my rig on. kind of call it valet diving. So that way the crew knew that I wanted to be on tinny number 3 or tinny number 2 or tinny number 1. It doesn't matter. They're all the same. It just depends on, some people like to get going and get in the ocean and start right away. I'm more get people out of my way kind of stuff. I don't want to be tripping over them, so then I would, usually the Frick brothers plus a couple others would go on tinny number 3 for that. And that's how you get loaded up for that. Great food on board, not real fancy kinds of stuff. Breakfast, French toast, bacon, coffee, juice, lots of fruit. And this is a scene one morning at breakfast. No assigned seating. You basically sit down. And what we try to do is we try to move around and meet new people and eat at different, there were 3 different group dinner tables. So we would just move around and talk to other people, no assigned seating. This was Ollie serving up pizza night. They did pizza one night for us. And you see the fly swatter, there was one day. We were just off of an island, and the air was pretty still, and the flies found us. So his job was to keep them off the food. So that's what Ollie was doing. Great salads, fresh watermelon. The food really was. It was very simple, but it was extraordinarily fresh and extraordinarily good. And I'll show you why here in a little bit. 3 meals a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner is what they had.
John,
Yeah.
how long did you have to wait after eating?
There's that old adage your parents or your mom used to, we were told my mom, an hour after you went swimming. There really wasn't. It was more how long do you have to wait after you eat before you dive. And there really isn't a timetable for that. I don't eat a lot when I'm diving. I eat a lot of dinner. I don't eat a lot when I'm diving because I don't want a full stomach, especially breakfast, and I love breakfast. But it would usually be about 45 minutes after you're done eating when you start to gear up for the next dive. So a little more than an hour probably before you hit the water. Yeah, great question though. This is kind of the route we took, and you can see here, this was Honiara, so we came up, basically we came into these islands, then went up into these islands, came back to these islands, came back over to these islands, and then came back to Honiara. So we were out there 10 days, kind of stuff. Saw a lot of natives, a lot of canoes, saw one other motorboat the whole time that we were out there, kind of stuff. So that was our route. Before we go underwater, just some quick pictures here. We would tow the tinnies behind the boat, and then when it came time to dive and the billikiki stopped, what they would do is they would pull the tinnies up to the boat. We'd get in, and usually the ride in the tinny was no more than an hour, no more than a mile. So if there are some, you can see I took that top picture from the billikiki. So maybe from here to Front Street might be a long tinny ride kind of stuff. Because the way the Solomon Islands were formed by a volcano, so coming off, there's no nice gently sloping beaches kind of stuff. It's volcanic walls drop off right off the island kind of stuff. So you don't have to go too far before you get into deeper, clear water. And then that's a picture I took when I had surfaced one day of the billikiki with a native canoe paddling out to it for that. To get in the water, though, this is a quicker shot of a tinny. What they would do, they'd pull that up next to the billikiki, put your gear in, and again, they would hold 8, and I don't know if you can see it, but there are holes right here that your tanks would fit in. So you'd pull your tank out once you're in the boat, put on the straps, put on your fins, and then you would sit up on the gunnel right here with the back of your tank hanging off of the boat. So there'd be 4 on each side plus the tinny driver once you get to the dive site. And the signal was bottoms up, so you'd have to have your gear on, and you'd hoist it up, and you'd sit with the tank hanging off of the back of the boat. And there's not much, and then they'd go out to the dive site, and I'm still waiting for tinny 3. They only had 2 of them, so. And then 1, 2, 3. And you just roll off the back. And you had to do that at the same time Why do you think? Not balance, good. I don't want to land on my brother. So if he's sitting next to me and he rolls off first, and he rolls off kind of at an angle, and the first thing that's going to hit him is my tank, he's not going to be real happy with me. So they drilled that into our head. Okay, on is 1, 2, 3, go. On, go. Everyone at the same time rolls off the back. Kind of made you feel like a Navy SEAL. You were kind of stuff, having fun like that. So, and we got, everyone got really kind of good at that. But then you got into the good stuff. I am fairly good at identifying the fish that we saw. I do have reference books, and they had reference books on board, so you could look, at your camera later. But these are just some pictures of the fish we saw, and all of these fish are new to me because I had never been diving in the South Pacific. Most of my diving was the Caribbean and the Atlantic, which are a whole different species of fish. So these are the ones that we saw: the Moorish idol kind of fish, the pennant banner fish, and these suckers are hard to get because they're fast. And so you got to be kind of at the right place at the right. Nice thing about digital photography now, boom, 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 and then you delete all the ones that you don't get, kind of stuff. Whereas before you had to ship the film into a special processor and spend a lot of money to find out you didn't get any photos of good fish. Digital photography is wonderful. Some of the other ones we came across is the red fin butterfly fish. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a little red fin down in here that identifies it, and you can see the stripes go horizontal on this one. Whereas its cousin, the vagabond, doesn't have the red fin, and it has two sets of fins. The top ones go horizontal, and the bottom ones go vertical. So the reference book comes in really handy. Then there's the spot-napped butterfly fish that has the spot on the top of its neck, right there. And then there's the saddled butterfly fish that has this black saddle along the back. So, and there are hundreds more butterfly fish. I spent more than a week trying to figure out, okay, which pictures am I going to put in here because I have so many of them. So I tried to get the better ones that I took, and my camera is just a little Canon point and shoot that's in an underwater housing that costs more than the camera cost to get it down there. So it's not a real expensive rig. Then there's the pyramid butterfly fish. If you didn't have more, there's the pyramid butterfly fish, and then the long-nosed butterfly. This was a tough one to see, but this one has a real long nose sticking out and coming out here with the black dot. So, and my brother Eric belongs to an organization called Reef, and what he does is he travels the world and he counts fish and identifies them, and then logs on to Reef's website and puts that information in because they're studying the health of reefs around the world. And he is very good at identifying fish. And about halfway through the trip, he was the go-to guy. People would say, "Hey, Eric, what's this?" And they'd show him, and he'd say, "Oh, that's a so-and-so and so-and-so kind of stuff." And he knows these fish inside and out kind of stuff. He's really good at it. So when I'd get stuck, I'd ask my brother for help. Not an easy thing to do. This is one of my favorite shots. I got a picture of a regal angelfish, the striped one, chasing a brush-tailed tang. The tang probably got a little bit too close to the nest or something like that. But those are, they're absolutely, and this is probably in about 40 feet of water, kind of stuff.
Now, what size are these fish?
Pardon me?
What size are they?
Great question. They are probably, let me go back to that. That brush-tailed tang is probably about the size of my hand. The real angelfish is probably a little bit bigger than my hand. Those butterfly fish are probably half the size of my hand. They're only about this big. They're much smaller than that. Yep. And I'll share a little bit of personal information. I have one bad eye. I have a bad right eye. I don't have much vision left in my right eye, which is why if you see me and my brother Rob diving, and he's typically my buddy, he will always hang out here on my left side because he knows I don't see much over here. Keep that in mind. Archer fish. Anyone here know what an archer fish does? They shoot water. This is in a mangrove roots, and I'm in about 18 inches of water, lying on my stomach. And the archer fish, what they would do, you can see they kind of have a flat top of their head. they've adapted over time. They would swim to the surface, and their eyesight has adapted where they will find insects on branches of the mangroves above the water. And when they see those, what they'll do is they will spit water or spit a stream of water, hit the insect will drop into the ocean, and the artificial will grab it and eat it. And I spent about 20 minutes waiting to see if I could get one to spit, and they were just too afraid of me. But they spit, they knock them off the branch, and then they gobble them up. Kind of stuff. Really cool to watch if you ever get a chance to see that. One of my favorite dives of the whole trip is what they call a canyon dive. Now, there's two types of diving I won't do. One is ice diving. I've kind of had my fill of cold water diving. And the other is cave diving. And the reason is I just have this issue of not being able to get to the surface, in case something goes wrong. So I won't do ice diving, but I will do cavern diving. This kind of gives you an idea of what it's like diving through a cavern. And that's me with the camera following some of the other divers. And that's all you hear underwater. Just the air, the bubbles in the air. It's about 60 feet underwater.
Did you see fish in there?
We didn't see much there, not in this one. And you saw it back here, if this will go back. This was, that cavern that tunnel we swam through was right here. So we rolled off the back of the tinny and then swam into that. And I'm going to go through that. And these are some of the pictures that I took as we were going through it. And I love the way the sunlight comes down through all this. This is probably some of the most beautiful diving that we did that whole week, kind of stuff. And then we came around a corner here, and you start to look up, and you can see, and I don't know how well you can see it, but you can see some dots on the top of the water. It was raining, kind of stuff. So we came in through there, and this you should be able to see it even better. You can see these little dots up here, the white dots. It was raining as we were coming up. And what happened was we surfaced in a pool in the forest. So we had swam through that canyon for about 15 minutes and then came up in this pool. You've got to be careful not to bang into the tree branch when you're coming up, but then surfacing, and then here's some of the people in the pool in the rainforest. And that was one of the really cool dives. That canyon diving was really kind of special. Pardon me? No, it's connected to the ocean. Yeah, so that's salt water that you're sitting in. Divers up. Once you're done with the dive, you come back to the boat, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit of a second. But typically you change into dry clothes onto the dry deck and relax. They always had, some snacks and salty popcorn. And you think you're just in the salt water, salty pop. I'm here to tell you there's something about popcorn after a dive, and freshly baked cookies. But what I always brought were lemon drops. And I would bring like 6 or 7 bags of these because after a dive, I'd walk around and I would share them with people. Lemon drops do a great job of getting rid of the saltwater taste in your mouth. And people have tried, people bring other stuff like, I'll use, first name, Cindy likes to bring those jellied fish, the red fish.
Swedish fish.
Pardon me?
Swedish fish.
Yes. Patty likes to bring Jolly Ranchers. I don't like those because then you have to deal with the wrapper, but it works. Doug likes to bring sour gummy worms. And there's one guy named Steve who I've dove with before. He brings beef jerky. And you'd think, beef jerky, it works. It gets rid of the salty taste in your mouth. So they affectionately refer to me as the lemon drop kid sometimes because I'm always bringing lemon drops. But first you got to get back to the boat. So that's my brother Rob. Who typically, and when we go on dive trips, he's usually my buddy. He knows my rig, he knows me, I know him, so we are typically buddies together. But this video, so we're surfacing after a dive, and you can see how blue and clear the water is. And that's my brother Eric. Coming up. And you're supposed, when you're surfacing, you spin to make sure you keep an eye out to see if there's any boats on the surface so you don't bang into something. And you just, slow and easy, you go up slower than your slowest bubble, and then you pop to the surface. And you can see the billikiki and the tinny coming to get us. The guys in the tinny would stay generally where you're diving, and they would watch your bubbles. So you could be a mile away from the boat, and you come up, and the tinny would be right there. And then he'd come over, he'd dump the ladder, you'd hand up your camera, and then you would climb up the ladder and get in the tinny, and the tinny would then take you back to the billikiki kind of stuff. But it's not always like glass. My brother and I, we went on one dive one day, and it started to rain. Dead flat calm, started to rain. We were down about 50 minutes. This is a brief, about a 7-second video. This is what happened when we came up. Those are 5-foot waves. So the ocean picked up while we were down there, and we knew it was raining, but we didn't know it was that much. So you just kind of pump up your vest, your buoyancy vest, and wait for the tinny to come and get you. So it's not always that dead flat kind of diving that you do. So that's why we like to. That's why dive operators like you to go diving at least once a year to practice your skills for that. This is a tinny coming back during that storm. I want you, when it gets closer to the boat, I want you to watch the faces of the people in the boat. They're having a great time. That woman right there, that's Menzi. That was her name. Menzi. That was the 82-year-old Japanese diver. And the person in the red behind her was my brother Eric, kind of stuff.
So,
Yeah.
with all that turbulence, is it really that easy for the tinny to spot the bubbles?
They do it. They do. They keep an eye. And they're not like real high up looking down over. I mean, they're right at water's level, and they can keep an eye on it.
The man's head is pretty small.
Yeah, and we do carry, most of us carry what they call safety sausages, which are inflatable, they're tubes that inflate to be about 6 feet tall, and they're orange. So if you get into some real trouble or they don't come and get you, you can pull it off your belt and pop it with your regulator and fill it up and just hold it, and it's 6 or 7 feet tall, they'll see that. So a safety sausage. Evening afterglow, some of the best times on a dive boat, some of the sunsets, and then this was happy hour. This was the nibbles. The deal with the bar, it was basically the honor system where you had to pay for, that was the only thing on the boat that you had to pay separate for, was alcohol, Diet Cokes, things like that. And what they would do is they had a sheet behind the bar that had your name, and if you had a Diet Coke or you bought a beer, or I would buy a bottle of wine and keep it behind the bar, and then when I'd walk up, John, the bartender, would say, wine, and he would pour me a glass out of my bottle. And they would just mark it down, and then at the end of the trip, you would settle up. But we were told, hey, if John is busy, because he was also a tinny driver and all, if John's busy, just go help yourself and mark it down on the sheet. And as far as I know, they've never gotten screwed over by that. It's always been pretty honest for that. But that's the afterglow, some of the sunsets. One of the strangest things, I put this on Facebook, so some of you may know the story, but before we went, my older brother said, there's this book you got to get, it's called Lonely Vigil. And it's the story about the Australian coastal watchers during World War II that were in the islands out there, the Solomon Islands. And what they would do is they would hide in the mountains, and they would monitor the Japanese troop and personnel movements up and down the slot, they called it, between the islands, and radio it to the Allies, who would then attack the troop ships. One of their jobs was to rescue downed Allied airmen. So if someone got shot down and landed and got to shore, the coastal watchers would keep them safe, radio the Allies, say, I have Mike here, come and get him. And what would happen is they would then come and rescue the downed airmen. And I'm reading this book in my bunk one night, and one of the ways they would do that is they would send in Allied submarines who would come into these bays. It would be like pulling into Partridge Bay out near Middle Island Point. Pulling in there, and underwater, at night, they would surface. The natives would bring out the downed airmen in a canoe, the airman would get on the sub would submerge, turn around, and sneak back out. And they said one of the most successful subs to do that during the war was the USS Guardfish in his book. That was my dad's boat. And I'm thinking, I'm pounding on my brother's bunk. Rob, you got to read this kind of stuff. He served on the USS Guardfish in the Solomon Islands during World War II. That was really, yep. Never talked about it. Never at all. Life on land. One of the reasons we wanted to do this was we had the opportunity twice to get off the boat and tour some of the islands, talk to some of the natives, purchase some of the wood carvings and things like that. That's a picture of Lenny and Edu on the forward gooping up with mosquito repellent, just in case. And this is us and the tinny going to one of the islands. And we spent this is Barbara getting off and the village chief greeting her, welcoming her to the island. And then what we got a chance to do was buy wood carvings. And I have one here. This might end up as a Christmas gift from the family, so I need this back. But I'll pass around if you'd like to see it. This is one of the carvings that I bought. And you'd walk around, and we were told, they'll barter with you if you want. You just don't want to take advantage of them. So we were told, when you ask them how much, you decide what you want, go away, come back, do the shopping thing, and ask them how much. And they'll say 400. And there was one American dollar was 8 Solomon dollars back then. So someone would say, and this happened to me with that, 400. And we are told when they do that, kind of think about it for a minute and go, best offer? And they said, just say best offer. So I said to him, best offer? And he goes, 200. And I must have done something because I went, and he goes, 150. I said, no, I'm playing the game. So we went back to 200 for that. But I probably could have gotten away with, 48 cents for the things that I bought. But it was really fun to talk to them and see. And I'm thinking, if you look at that, you see how smooth that is. And, they used ebony wood and zebra wood and different woods that they would get on the island. And so I'm talking to the carver, and I'm picturing in my mind him sitting, I'm amazed how smooth that is. So, him squatting, on the beach with the sand, rubbing it on the wood and rinsing it off and rubbing it on the wood. So I said to him, how do you get it so smooth like that? And he looks at me and he goes, sandpaper. Rough first, smooth later. So much, I'm picturing him squatting there at sunrise, rubbing this thing in for the dumb American tourists, but he knew a lot better than that kind of stuff. And most of the food that we ate, a lot of the food that we ate, came from the natives. What they would do is they would pull up to the Billikiki in the evening, and we would buy produce and fish right from the natives kind of stuff. Almost every night they would pull up. This is some pictures of that. The Spanish mackerel, which was really, really good. This is the typical dinner, a lot of rice. Those were beef kebabs, I think. Lots of salads and things. But they came in dugout canoes and paddle right up. And you can see, I think she was maybe 6 years old, out in the ocean at night alone in a canoe. There were other canoes with her, but she's on her own. Kind of stuff. Really kind of amazing. And this is Ollie and Tina bartering with the natives to buy melons. And Ollie toying with them. Yes, yeah. And one of the things, I don't know if you can tell, but one of the things Ollie was handing out were seeds. They would give them seeds to replant the crops. And we'd also buy the fruit from them. Yes, these packages of seeds and money. Ollie was the banker. fun. Yep. The meals and the nibbles. So this is just some shots of the meals. The green top there, that was like limeade, fresh made limeade. They would haul off those canoes from the natives, bin after bin after bin of limes, and then spend the rest of the day making limeade for us. A little bit of sugar and, but the middle picture there, that's that Spanish mackerel. That's how that ended up on my plate for that. And then the nibbles kind of stuff. The bottom picture there, Michael, who is right there, his sister told the crew that it was his birthday. That was one of the last nights we were on board. So the crew made him a cake, and we sang happy birthday, and we celebrated his birthday. He was really kind of touched. He didn't know that was coming. So that was a lot of fun for that. Back into the ocean. You might be... Can people see what's in that picture? You care to try to identify it? Mike, you see it?
See it. Looks like a face in the upper left.
Looks like a face?
Face in the upper left-hand corner.
Up in there? That is a hermit crab.
Is what?
Hermit crab. And it's about the size of the tip of my thumb. Keep in mind, I have a bad eye. My goal now is to find the little stuff, kind of stuff. But that's a tiny little hermit crab. This was one of the weird parts of this trip. So Tina giving a briefing one day, we were off an island, and she said, now when you're on this dive, one of the things you may hear some thumping or some humming noise underwater, some thumping. And she said, what that is Cavachi, which is an active underwater volcano, and she said it's about 15 miles that way. And we're like, really? And we're thinking she's trying to sell it to us. That's not. But she said, no, it's an active underwater volcano. If you hear this thumping noise, that's what it is. I'm going to show you some video, and you have to listen closely. I think the speakers will pick it up at the beginning. It's about 50 seconds long, and listen it right towards the very end. It'll be towards the end. That was the underwater volcano that was about 15 miles away, that thump. And when you're underwater, if you do this, it felt like this. You could feel it in your chest. And for about 6 dives out of that whole week, we could hear that. And it really, we're looking around, I'm looking at my brother, and the eyes are big, and this is really, really weird. Last time it actually erupted above the surface, I believe, was 2019 kind of stuff. But that underwater volcano was really a spooky kind of situation. It's not all about the little fish, so some feather stars that are awfully pretty, I think. Octopus, we only saw one on this trip, but right there, and then trying to hide. Right there, this eye, right there. A little octopus. Couldn't get him to come out to get some video. A Solomon crab, which is probably half the size of your pinky nail. And what it does is, whoops, I went to the giant clam. What it does is I blew it up a little bit. It hides in these little holes. This is that guy, but it hides in the little holes there, and it's got the pink claws. So it's a Solomon crab. Giant clam, which is really probably this big around. And all different colors. We probably saw 6 or 7 of them in the whole trip, but all sorts of different colors for that. Starfish everywhere. Nudibranch, which are kind of like little sea slugs, and those are about the size of your index finger, the tip of your index finger. So really kind of small stuff. And people, how do you see that? People ask, what I do, A, you just watch for movement, and two, I keep an eye on other people, because if Mike is hanging over there for a couple of minutes, I know he's found something. So I will then swim. Once he's gone, I'll swim over and look to see what. And most people, especially if you're taking pictures, will say, "Come over here," and real small, and right there, and hand signals underwater. So they're pretty generous. Once they take their pictures, they'll call you over and do that. We also got a chance to visit one other remote village for about half a day. That's my brother Rob talking to the village chief and his brother, and that's Ollie. That was when we were getting off the island, but basically when we got there, they had all of the little girls, all of the daughters, lined up basically by height and age, so roughly oldest to youngest, and they all had leis for us. And they had us line up, and then what they would do is they would give each one of us a lei and welcome us to the village. And that was Menzie getting hers. And then we sat kind of in a semicircle, and they brought us out. And I don't know how they did this. It was basically a coconut with cool coconut milk inside and a straw. I don't know how they cooled it down, because I don't know how much electricity they had out there. But what they would do is they would each of us, some refreshment, and then I just adore that picture of the little girls lying in the grass. And then the dancers came. Men first, women second, children after that. And the men were doing a war dance. I didn't get video of it, but they came out very choreographed, a lot of fun. And they would charge at someone, one of us, and stop real short and then back up and synchronize. It was really kind of special. And then the women came out and did some dancing for us. And the little girls were trying, they were learning kind of lessons. And here is, I like the little girls. I'm trying. They knew when to clap. And there was this rattling sound. We couldn't figure out where it was coming from. You see on their ankles, they had seed pods or shells strapped to their ankles, and that's where we could hear the shaking. They were fun. After the dance, we got a tour of the village. We got to walk around. This is Menzie taking a look at the schoolhouse. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a chalkboard right there. So that's the schoolhouse. And these are actually the houses where they lived. It's a very extremely rustic. Some repair underway, I think. But every once in a while, we caught them. Someone somehow got a little solar panel and would charge something. So in this village, we only saw one of those.
Now, did they get money from you, from dive people?
Yes, yeah. The dive people, at the beginning of the trip, we stopped at that island, and one of the tinnies ran over to the island and dropped off a letter to the chief requesting they do this and provided them with some money for that. And we didn't tip them, right? That would not have been acceptable. But the Billikiki did pay them for that. And they use that to buy food, buy seeds, and things like that. Yep. This was the schoolhouse. This is the church. And it was very, very structured. Men on the left, women on the right, oldest to youngest in the church.
Did they have a religion that they practiced? It was their own.
Pardon me?
Did they have a religion that they practiced? Did they
We saw crosses on the island, especially in the graveyard, so I would assume there have been Catholic priests that have tried to convert the natives back before World War II, and I think some of that has carried over to now. Yeah. Dugout canoes. Yeah. There weren't a lot of wrecks on the Solomon Islands, and the reason for that is because it's so deep. Those islands, they drop off real quickly to hundreds of feet, and I can't go that deep. But there were still some there. Some of these wrecks, like this one, was an old barge that was in about 80 feet of water that we could actually get down to. One of the disappointing things, and I can partly understand it, but now, of course, being an environmentalist, one of the things that the Allies did during the war, they were moving so quickly to catch the Japanese as the Japanese retreated. When they were done on an island and had to move to the next one, they wouldn't take the jeeps and the tanks and everything with them. They would simply plow them into the ocean. Because the time to load them onto a cargo ship, take the cargo ship to the next island, build something to get them off the ship was just, they didn't have the time to do it. So they would simply bulldoze things right off the edge of the reef into the water. You can see that's a tire from a cannon that was in about 100 feet of water for that. They just simply plowed it into the ocean, and there's really no economical way to get it out anymore. We did get to dive on a Kawanishi, I believe is how you pronounce that, flying boat, one of the bigger flying boats that the Japanese had. And this is some video. This is the deepest I went. This was 105 feet to get to this one. And that's my brother in the upper left with his camera. I kind of ran into him.
Did you see plastic pollution? Did you see?
I found, the only thing I found, not in the ocean, but I did find one COVID mask on an island. One of the blue surgical masks on an island. I have that picture. I didn't put it in this, but I found one of those. But other than that, no. Other than that, we didn't see any trash at all in the ocean, which is kind of nice. One of the villages that we cruised by, we saw they had used an old propane tank, for your grill. They hung it from a tree, and they used that as a bell to call people back from the ocean, like for a community dinner or a gathering or whatever, because you could see it hanging on a rope, so they would reuse stuff like that. They were very inventive. I know they don't have a lot of stuff, so they have to use what they have, what they could get. Some of the odd but beautiful fish. This is a map puffer that I found, and you can see the map. You can see, for those of you who hike or know what the topographic charts look like exactly. You can see the lines to it. It's a map puffer. I think this one was just about ready to have her babies. I'm just guessing. But a map puffer fish. This is one of my favorite, a clown triggerfish. I wish I could have gotten a clear, but fast little bugger. Hard to get hold. And this one was probably about this big. This was bigger, but it was still pretty fast. But a clown triggerfish. Yellow boxfish. A juvenile. It grows up to be the same fish. This is just a real small one. Probably about, I don't know, the size of my fist maybe. That one. Blue trigger. Again, real fast. Things I'm just not fast enough with the camera. Look how big that one is. That's a circular spadefish looking at Tina, staring her down. So that's how big those things can get. No, and none of these are dangerous. None of these kinds of fish. There is one that I'm going to show you here in a little bit, but none of these are dangerous. You don't have to worry about them hurting you more that you don't want to hurt them. A pink-tailed triggerfish. You see that bottom fin? Someone took a chunk out of its fin. And believe me, the colors are much better. I was on a dive trip a couple weeks ago in Bonaire, and my camera, after 14 years, finally died. So now I get to buy a new one. So come back in a year or so, and we'll see if I can get any better. A reef lizardfish. This one is about 6 inches long with the red. But they don't move. They just sit there, and you have to kind of look for them. And I like to cruise about a foot off the bottom and just very slowly Just keep looking down, right and left, and eventually I will find something. This is the one you have to be careful about. Do you see it? Right in here. The head is right in here. And it's got spines on it. If you step on it or touch it, the spines are very poisonous. It won't kill you, but you'll end up in the hospital. It'll hurt that much. Yep. Black spotted pufferfish. He's a cute little guy. Reef top pipefish. This is almost a foot long. Yeah. Sea cucumber. Not the cutest guy in the ocean, but
That whole big thing is a sea cucumber?
yeah, this, from the tail back here, probably that long or so. Crocodile fish. This one you might be able to see. Yeah. This was one of the ones that when they told me about this, I want to see a crocodile fish. There were two fish that I wanted to see, and this was the next to last dive. And Ollie called me over and pointed, and it took me a little. I'm hovering there, going, "What? And he finally almost touched it, and you can see with the snout right there in the eyes and the pectoral fin and the tail kind of coming back. Yeah. It's a part of the stonefish family, so I would imagine it might take a swipe at you, kind of stuff. Yeah. Fire dartfish. These actually stopped, so I gotta. And these are small. All of these are probably less than the size of, are probably about the size of my pinky finger. Its cousin, the two-tone dartfish. Those are fast. They wouldn't stop, so I got lucky with that picture. This one, the black parrotfish juvenile. Ready for this? Try to get that picture. I'm looking for it, saying, wait, where'd I go?
Yeah.
They just wiggle around like that. Yep.
Did you see any predators eat fish?
We did not. No, they do, but primarily at night they would do that. But no, we did not see that. A fang blenny, and this one, again, about the size of your pinky, this one actually, if you get near it, it will come and take a little nip out of you. It doesn't hurt. You can feel it, but a fang blenny, because they got little tiny teeth in it. The clown blenny, I think you might be able to see that one. But I blew it up a little bit so you could see it. Again, you just got to look for, you have to look for motion or things moving underwater. And when I say movement, I'm talking this. You'll see it do that a little bit. I'm going to catch it. Freckled hawkfish, a banded shrimp goby. The reason they call it a shrimp goby is the hole that it lives in also typically will house a shrimp, some kind of cleaner shrimp, so they cohabitate together. And that's why it's called a banded shrimp goby. And if you get too close, he'll duck down in, and then you back off a little bit, and he'll come back up again, and then duck back in, and play a little hide and seek with you. And these are my favorites. This class. This is a spine cheek anemone fish, and the anemone fish are the ones who live in actual anemones. If you touch the anemone, it'll sting you. The anemone fish, when they're growing up, because they nest in these anemones, and when they're growing up, because they're constantly rubbing up against the tentacles, they develop an immunity to the sting from the anemone. So they do get stung, but they develop an immunity to it. But this is a spine cheek anemone fish. The white bonnet, you can see this one with the white patch on top of his head, a white bonnet anemone fish. This is the Clark's anemone fish, and these are probably the most aggressive of the anemone fish. This one actually came up and bumped my mask because it had a nest somewhere, and it was protecting its young. And it actually took a little chunk, you didn't see it, but actually bit my brother. He said he was kind of doing this to the fish. And I said, well, what do you expect? You do this to the fish. And it actually took a little nip out, he could feel it take a nip. So they're the most aggressive of the anemone fish. But I just think anemone fish are cute. They have that facial feature, and they look at you. They just sit there and watch you, as some of the other fish don't. This is an orange anemone fish with a white stripe down its back, and there's also a skunk anemone fish. And the only way you can tell the difference, it's hard from here, is the skunk anemone fish has this white stripe will go down its face and over its lip and down into its chin, whereas the orange, it stops at the upper lip. So it's just little tiny changes like that to teach you how to identify the fish. And an orange fin looks kind of like the Clark's anemone, but this one has a white tail and then the orange fin on the top and the bottom. And the black with the white spot are its young. And then eventually it morphs into the parent that looks like that. You can see it's touching the anemone, no problem, no ill effects or anything like that. And that's only in about 20 feet of water. So you can see how much color stays when you don't go that deep. Yeah. Red and black anemone fish looks very much like the spine cheek, but it's a darker red and black towards the tail. And these are my favorite, the clown. I actually had that picture blown up. I have that in my house now. That's a clown anemone fish. Yeah, and that was the other one that I wanted to see. I told Tina, I said, I want to see a clown. And it took most of the week until we find, they're pretty rare, the clowns. And then I got another good shot. And you can tell it's a clown anemone fish because it's got this little white bump, and it's also got a black outline around all of the white stripes. So that's how you can tell it's a clown anemone fish. So departure, 9 days of diving, about 30. I did 34 dives because I didn't do the night dives, and my logbook shows that I spent about 33 hours underwater for those 9 days. A little bit less, 55 minutes or so per dive, and that was the group on the. And there's Menzie, Erin. By the way, Erin and her husband Mike are doing cancer fighting research in Australia. They're from Vermont, but they're expats. They live in Sydney, and are doing cancer research over there. And this is getting off the boat. Lenny and part of the rest of the crew getting off the boat. So what's next? When I was here a year ago and I talked about the Kingdom of Bhutan, this was on my list for next. And my older brother, when he retired, before he retired, he inherited my dad's roll-top desk. And, roll-top desk has all these cubbies in it everywhere. And they took one cubby, he and his wife, and that was their ticket drawer. And while they were working, they always had a ticket in the drawer. So they'd get back from a trip, and they would book their next one and put the ticket in that cubby. So it's important you always have a ticket in the drawer. And I've adopted that mantra. So for me, next year, I'm going to the Boundary Waters with my friends Jill and Paul, taking them to the Boundary Waters for the first time in September for 8 days. We still haven't finalized. Well, we're all going to be retired, so we'll just stay out there for a month, something like that. And then one of the things, I'm going to go down to the Florida Keys in October and plant coral. Coral typically starts to die off at about 88 degrees, when the ocean's at about 88 degrees. And there's an organization down on Marathon Key where you sign up to dive with them. You have to pay to go diving, but then they'll spend a day teaching you how to plant coral. So I'm going to spend a few days down there diving and planting coral. Figure, me to give back here a little bit. And then Bloody Bay Wall on Little Cayman in November, which I've been to before. Eric went, the only place that I will go back to all the time is Little Cayman. Very rustic, nice resort, great diving, and I have a lot of friends that go with. So I'll go. This will be, I think, my 4th time to Bloody Bay Wall. Pirates used to be there. That's why they call it Bloody Bay, not because divers die or anything like that kind of stuff. But then in 2025, and this is my older brother. I need to quit hanging out with my brother. He wants to take us, and we've put money down to the Socorro Islands. Or do any of you know where that is? It's down off the tip of the Baja, California. It is down here, and it's about 250 nautical miles down to the Socorro Island for diving. And the reason we're going there is because we're going after the big boys. We want hammerhead sharks. We want giant mantas. We want whale shark. We might be a little bit late for humpback whales. I think the migration is going to go before that, but we're hoping to see false orca, which are about the size of killer whales, but they're called false orca. But we're going there in May of 2025. We want to get the big boys.
That's our half-hour warning.
That's your warning?
Yep.
Cool. Well, to show you, okay, I was told I had 90 minutes. It is now 8 o'clock, and we are done. How's that for timing? And I do need to cheat a little bit. This is a gin and tonic, but it was prophylactic. It was before I went on the trip because I don't want to get scurvy. So that's kind of my mantra there. But I do enjoy scuba diving. It's one of my sister says I have more hobbies than anyone she's ever known, but it's probably one of the best things. And I enjoy sharing this information with friends and all of you. And thank you very much for coming tonight. I appreciate it. I will be around if you have any questions, if you'd like. For those of you who I don't know, I left some business cards on the back there. If you want to grab one of those with my contact information, I'd be happy to do this presentation again for groups if you know of people or classes or stuff like that. But it's always fun to come and relive adventures like this. But thank you very much. Have a great evening, everyone. Thank you.